Recently I've been shown this video by a friend of mine, and after 26 minutes I reached the end and I thought, I need to talk about this, because people has to know. First of all, some context. Our hero of the day, this guy here, is Yuri Bezmenov, and he's a former KGB agent, but also a deserter Russian spy. This video, which I'm going to show fragments of, is from an interview taken in 1984. In this interview, he talks about KGB operating in foreign countries such as India to manipulate the masses into revolting against the rightful government and state of being, to then transform the country into a communist or socialist or whatever oligarchy. This interview is not only a rampant of truth, a light in the darkness, it's a weapon in the hands of us freedom fighters to battle the spread of communism in the world. It's the mean to fight against the destruction of our perfect society and way of life. It's an impediment for our free... Okay, that's enough. This interview is embarrassing, and I need to tell you why. Because it was maybe funny 30 years ago when the American propaganda was, oh no, the Russians are coming, but to hear these things today is just disgusting from someone like me. So in this speech I am going to destroy this interview, using its focal points, jumping from the beginning to the end. Why is that, you may ask? I think I'll do more videos like this, but what you need to know is how modern propaganda works. Basically, they show a problem, they explain it throughout the content, and then they present a solution that doesn't come from the problem. It comes from a hidden thesis that they are trying to convince you of with problems from other causes. But you will understand this later. Spoilers ahead, this interview has nothing to do with political discussion. This is just another piece of old American propaganda against the Soviets, made during the Cold War. If you reach the end, you'll see. The first part of this interview aims to show us how bad the Soviets are, or were, because you know, the Soviet Union does not exist anymore, and to show us that they were immoral human beings that acted with the sole purpose of power and control over other innocent human beings. To explain that to us, we are told the terrible means of KGB acting in foreign countries, and we are told how, from example, when they were done with their plans, they would kill any personality that wasn't useful to them anymore. You might find it weird, but I agree on that. I know how KGB was, but you see, my problem is not with the facts themselves. My problem is in how they are used. They are accusing the entire system of being wrong with the example of an institution that is bad by definition. Secret services are always bad, because they represent the mean of power, which is the most far from people's chance of participation. And we have services in today's democracies as well, and they do terrible things. Don't get me wrong, I am not trying to defend KGB, I despise it as much as all the other services, but I'm trying to show you how it doesn't really matter what the facts are, but how those are read and used. Later in the video, Yuri Bezmenov explains to us how the KGB operates in the case of propaganda. For example, when they are trying to aid a revolt in a country to make it a future ally of the Soviet Union. He says how there are two kinds of cogs in this machine. First, there are the foreign leaders, often trained by the Russians themselves, and then there are the true believers, brainwashed by the leaders to start a revolt that would be then used by the Soviets to take control of the country. The first phase, it's called demoralization.
It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern.
What scares me is what a modern viewer understands of that. I often come across that concept that the system, being it wrong, will never change, so it's useless to act against it. But this is even worse. What it's saying is, the system is not wrong, the problem is the individuals, the evil individuals behind who tells you it's wrong. When idealistic people tell you that the system needs to be changed, don't listen to them. They say that because they're being brainwashed. This is how the enemy will invade us. You think they are convinced and sure of themselves, but their conviction is actually blindness. They don't think anymore, they are no longer able to make logical connections. So the system is not wrong, you are wrong by thinking it's not perfect. This is funny to be heard by someone that lived under the Soviet Union, where propaganda was so strong that their way of life was called paradise. But let's keep going.
You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
Probably this second part is even more important. So basically, if you don't follow what the state of quo wants you to believe, this is not common sense. So if you believe in socialism, for example, you are not simply brainwashed, you are also stupid.
So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed.
This is interesting because it's an attempt to demonize the movements that were born during the Cold War, which went in fact against two major issues of the global state of being: the abundance of nuclear warheads and the rise of the capitalism that we know. So just like he said, defense and economic, the cornerstone of the United States. We arrived at the same old conclusion: everyone that goes against the status quo must be controlled by someone, or must be wrong, because the system is not wrong, the system is perfect. Anyway, for Mr. Bezmenov, the United States are condemned. Remember the times, 1984 is still inside the period which we called, and we call still, the Cold War, so the propaganda fight between the Russians and the States. Why I say that? Just listen to our former spy.
This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with unless you want to live in Antarctica with penguins. This is it. This is the last country of freedom and possibility.
Okay,
So the point of it all is not an attack, it's not just an attack on communism, it's a defense of free market. Remember what I said at the beginning, and let's try to read from back to start now. So, we need to explain to the masses that the free market is the best system in the world. our way of life, capitalism and consumerism, is what represents us. Those are the rules we live by. How do we compare that with socialism, that we are fighting in fact? Do we look at the welfare economics, or the social justice or injustice of the two systems? No, because that is too complex. We point at something saying, this is communism, and we point at the secret services. It doesn't matter that we have them as well, and we use the same murdering methods in which human life does not have a value. And what is communism? Communism is murderers. The solution against them is free market. So in the end, the solution to murderers is free market. Basically, we are not fighting communism or socialism or whatever you want to call it with the ideals. We are saying those system is a bunch of murderers. Our system, which is free market, is not. So our system must be better. Here we are not trying to actually explain why the free market works. I mean, from my point of view, they cannot explain that because that's not true. But anyway, they're not even trying. They're not giving you anything to prove that the free market works or that the free market is the perfect system. They are blaming the others. So they're basically saying our system is good because this other system, which is the Russians, which is in that case our enemy, because remember the interview is from 1984, the other system is wrong. So we're not trying to say our system is right for this and this and this reason. We are saying this is right because our enemy is wrong. And so if our enemy is wrong, we must be right. At the end of it all, there is one last thing I want to say. Watching the full interview, hearing the methods of KGB takeover, I really thought that a similar thing was happening during my time, and I'm scared of it, but not for the reason you probably think. I'm scared because the same logic that Yuri Bezmenov uses against the Soviet Union could be used to those people that every day defend the system in which we are living. And who is that? It's the people that even when shown where the economy fails, and how it will continue to fail because it's broken, when shown how brutal the world is, they can't look over their noses. This is why I attacked this speech, not because I care for communism, I'm not even a communist. It's because I see a world that is falling into a bottomless pit, and instead of trying to change the system, we keep repeating that everything is fine. And what's even worse is how the public opinion is degenerating. First it was democracy, and when discussing, people said it might not be perfect, but it's the best we've got. But there was still room for change. Then from democracy we went to capitalism, and we said capitalism is bad, yes, but it's still the best we have got. And some said even that we are living in a bad capitalism, but there is still room for a better one. Now I am beginning to hear capitalism has nothing wrong. If poor people exist, it's their fault, and their fault only. If you think there's something wrong, it's because you don't want to work. So from the economy, it is no more part of our lives, it is our lives. We went back to social problems. And now we don't have problems anymore. We don't have racism, we just have a few racist people. Feminism is a stupid movement, women are fine, and there is no problem with violence, and in particular nothing with violence done by men to women. When I was little we used to talk about world hunger. Now there is no poor people in the world. Why? Because we decided that $2 per day is enough. Because that is the average income of some countries in Africa. For example in Mozambique, where the miners that work all day looking for gold eventually reach $2. And that's it. That's all they have. Now we even invented the term absolute poverty, so that we can feel better about ourselves, because most people live above a level that we decided it's enough. We are the one brainwashed by the society of a spectacle, by the media, by the system as a whole. But I guess I'm wrong, because I don't speak for myself and the people around me, the people I care about. I'm controlled by the communist secret services, and also I guess I'm just stupid.